Welcome back to The Person Everyone Needs. We are talking about goals. Oh yeah, my name's Webb Hoggard. We're talking about goals. The last couple of weeks we talked about how important goal setting and dreaming big are. Last week we talked about how we need to be able to break down those things into bite-sized chunks so that we know exactly what it is that we want to accomplish. Becoming very systematic about seeing what it is that we want to accomplish and doing what we have to do to get there. It's a super helpful part of actually finding some success in your life is when you've decided, like, if I can do this every day, I will eventually get where I want to. And so that I mentioned last week, it's a blessing in your finances. It could be a blessing in your diet. It can be a blessing in your career goals and what you want to set up for the next part of your life. So that's the goal breakdowns. And that leads to what I want to tell you next, which is even Dave Ramsey would tell you if you were talking about the snowball effect, which is taking your lowest debt and getting rid of it very quickly and then moving that momentum to the next one. Let's talk about the word momentum. That's the third one today. The reason you want to break things down into smaller pieces is because you can build momentum. And John Maxwell calls it the big mo. And it's like the thing that is the thing that changes the trajectory of everything. Look how ball teams are. You know, you watch a team that catches fire late in the season. Honestly, this year I think the Eagles will be about as good as everybody else. Of course, I'm jaded. I'm a Washington fan, so the Philadelphia Eagles are not my favorite. But last year, I would put last year's Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl team up against any team in the history of the NFL. They were so hot at the right time of year that I don't know anybody that could step up toward them. They were a phenomenal team, but they struck heat at the right time. If you look at even businesses have that have made it big. They were in the right industry when the market or the demand hit at the right time, and they were able to scale up, multiply at the right time, and make a huge dent in becoming significant in the world because they were ready for those types of things. Momentum changes everything. Momentum now is very important. You don't want to just be high octane and rev the engine as high as you can. You want to keep things as high as they can, but they're able to stay sustainable. Look at Apple. Apple in the 90s was a laughingstock, but when Steve Jobs returned, they have a couple of inventions that changed the world forever. And I just realized, we're on the 10th or 11th generation of the iPad, and that was so revolutionary when it came out. It was like, oh my gosh, we have been waiting for this invention since the beginning of the world. It's probably not that big of a deal, but it's fantastic that all these inventions have come from this. And what momentum they've got now is they literally could come out with the eye toothpick, and I would be ready to spend $300 on a toothpick because I trust that brand because their momentum has been so high for so long. When you start getting momentum, you'll start seeing that everything else kind of rises along with you, and then your job will be to do whatever you can to keep momentum flowing in that right direction. You can blame it on people, you can blame it on systems, you can give credit wherever you want to, but the truth is momentum largely happens because of and then stays because of being consistent in the right direction. So the first week we talked about picking your finish line. What is the goal in your life? Where are you headed? Because that will decide your direction. The second week we talked about how do you consistently break down to make sure you got little checkpoints to help you get to the big goal where you're heading. You're not getting to the finish line immediately. You're going to break it down into checkpoints so that you can meet there. And so as you begin to pick up those wins, that's when momentum takes place. Now, one of the phrases I kind of have for my life that I think is very important is there is a break coming. So I know that it seems like in your life, it feels like, my goodness, this life is coming at me so fast, and nothing, it's not going well. I feel like I'm drowning. I'm not going to catch up. But no matter what, it seems like no matter what, at some point there is a snow day that's coming. There is another check that is coming in the mail. There is another break somehow. There are moments that are coming to you that's going to be a blessing to you. And if you plan well, you can make well of those blessings, of those breaks or of those increases. You can make big of them. But if you are living your life in survival mode and you never planned well, when you get that break, when you get that day off, when you get that extra bit of money, when everything works in your way, you waste it because you never had a plan for the parts you had to be consistent with. All right, I'm going to slow down. All right, I was getting some momentum there. Here's what I know. If you're not planning out your life, when you get these breaks or these helps, you'll waste it. I promise. You will not suddenly become wise when you get the big break. That's why I laugh at every person who says, if I won the lottery, I know exactly how I would handle it. You would handle it probably exactly how you are handling it. The money that is coming in right now is your money. And so to think that you would radically change suddenly because some circumstances changed is probably not a good assessment, and it's not the best way to live. The best way to live is decide for yourself what direction you're going in, and every day do all that you can to get there. Momentum. When you pick up some wins, everybody begins to believe the impossible is possible. There's excitement that comes. The whole crowd begins to think, hey, we can do this. There's nothing we can't accomplish together. That's what you want on your team. You want a team full of people who are all in and fully believing that there's nothing impossible together. Now, what about your family? Picking up some momentum, you have a couple of good conversations. You don't want to get over eager and then start, preaching every time that pops in your head, but you're still looking for opportunities to keep an open line in your relationships with your friends, with your family. And that's how you build momentum. Because if they'll open up to you and they'll continue to talk to you, specifically when things don't matter, the chances are that's going to be the place they go to talk through things when things do matter. You want to have some level of momentum in those relationships. Let me tell you a different way of momentum. Let's talk about relationships. You want to invest in a relationship before you need it. I see people going through heartbreaking things regularly, and in the middle of it, they'll say, I've got nobody. Okay, but before things got rough, you needed to be investing in a friend because that friend will be there when things get rough. We need to be people who are willing to build bridges before we need to cross them. We have been told and encouraged to believe that it's just as good to complain and whine about what we don't have than it is about building the things that we do need. Be proactive. That's how you build momentum. There have been a lot of things in my leadership that I've had to build a relationship before I needed that relationship, and I never knew if I did. And in fact, there's a lot of relationships that I've built and never, quote unquote, needed, but it hasn't harmed me to be there for others, to build up others, to bless others. And so momentum looks like when you get a few wins under your belt, all of a sudden your confidence begins to build. So this is the way I want to close today. This is something that I wish so badly I could get through my kids' head, all of them. But when you're trying something new, the chances are you're going to suck at it. In fact, the worst thing you could probably do is be good at it the first time because you're going to think it's easy. And most of the time that's easy the first time doesn't mean it's easy. It just means that you got lucky or that you had a good day. The first time I went hunting with my dad with my own gun, I stood up in the stand, and there was a little deer right under the stand. I pointed, aimed, and one shot, I dropped that deer. And so for me, for a long time, it was like, man, this is so easy on my first time with the only gun, and I killed this deer. Well, I went like 4 years before I could put down another one because every time I pulled up my gun to shoot, I apparently just thought pulling the trigger was enough because the first time it was, but I had kind of reduced my aiming skills and stuff like that. So what am I telling you about all about the deer story for? Is because just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's not worth working at. And It doesn't mean there isn't more joy there. When it comes to momentum, you need to get a few wins under your belt, and then your confidence will build. Your understanding of what you're doing will build. So the next time you've got to do something that's new, fresh, that's different, that's something you're not used to, give yourself the break and say, hey, I'm going to do this 5 times before I start putting any pressure on me to get it right. I'm going to do it 5 times. After 5 times, I know I'll have more grace, I'll have more confidence, I'll have more knowledge, I'll have more understanding. I will be better after 5 times. And that is momentum. Momentum within yourself, that you're not expecting yourself to be an expert on the first opportunity, but that you're going in to learn, and you're going to do all that you can to experience and learn and build that momentum. Because if you can build momentum in your life, you're going to find great success. There's no better place to do that than in relationships. People who leave the door open and build momentum in relationships, that's a person that everyone needs.